Hi, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to another episode of Ask the Experts podcast. Today, we welcome Asaf Darash. He is the founder and CEO of Regack. They are a global organization and payments platform. They have evolved into a trusted organization across industries, including camps, events, nonprofits, education, and professional training. Asaf has a unique talent whereby he is transforming complex organizational challenges into simple, intuitive software solutions. And I'm excited to share more about Asaf. And today we are going to explore his journey and insights into digital payments and registrations, and also the art of designing software to make real impact. Asaf, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with what inspired you to start Regack, and how does the platform support organizations worldwide?
Okay. So, Regack actually started as a research project for me. While I was doing my PhD at UC Berkeley, I was working on how can you create computerized systems that have no constants in them, that everything's a variable, everything can change.
Mhm.
And when I was working on that, at the time, my professor was from MIT and he claimed it's not possible. It was obviously that turned it into a total challenge to show that it is possible. And I built a prototype, and the prototype worked, and et cetera, et cetera. Everything was really interesting in that sense. And then life happens. I decided, my wife at the time decided that she wants to stay and be a professor. I decided that I don't want to stay and become a professor in academia. And I wanted to take this thing that I built and see if you can use it for something. At the time, I was also working at the administrative staff at the university. And I understood that one of the most complex situations of workflows is actually registration and onboarding of students or clients to service-based businesses. So I said, okay, that's a perfect place to start. Let's just try and see. Let's take a few organizations, convince them to try something out, and see if I can build something that is better than what they're doing now.
Right.
And that's basically how Regack started. Later, I found out something even more interesting, where when I was doing this, is I found out, okay, there are solutions out there that do this, but every vertical has a different solution. And
Right.
again, why? Why
Mhm.
does every vertical have a different solution? Because the software has constants in it, and not everything is a variable. And
Right.
now suddenly I said, okay, so what later became Regack, this can actually become the Shopify for services, the thing that every type of service can use, from a doctor's office to a lawyer's office to a camp to an event to a nonprofit to an after school, etc.
Mhm.
And suddenly technology opened up the path for a solution that was not possible beforehand. So that's how Regack started. I set up a company and I decided to start building this. There were a lot of technological challenges, which from my perspective is just fun. And and then we started working with organizations and we started learning. In the beginning, Regack had nothing to do with payments. It was just like gathering information, data processing, onboarding, e-signing, stuff like that. And I remember the conversation with actually one of the clients. We built like this. Computer scientists are funny, right? We build stuff that interests us, right? Instead of the clients a lot of time. So we build this statistical tool that allows you to see like statistics between units, like something like really elaborate and weird and and hard to explain. And I remember I was talking to one of our then clients, they're still a client actually after 14 years. Um, and I was showing the tool and he was like, yeah, that's nice, but what I really need is to be able to take money from my people.
Mm.
And that's what made the whole change with RegPack. And RegPack basically became one of the strongest payment platforms there is out today.
Amazing. You talk about challenges. Every business owner, there's always challenges in the business, but it's how, as entrepreneurs, we pivot to make that. So you said initially it wasn't a payments platform. So can you just share with us what was the platform initially, and then how you changed it so you adopted the payments and registration?
It started basically as a data gathering and onboarding platform. So think of
Hmm.
like any service type business. Let's make it a little different. If you want to buy a shirt, the
Hmm.
onboarding process of buying a shirt is paying for the shirt. That's it. Like there's no onboarding process, right? You don't need to, nobody needs to know your name, nobody needs to know anything, right? Whereas every service type business, there is an onboarding process because they need to know what you need, who is going to help you, when you're going to get the service, how you're going to get the service. There's always an onboarding process. So initially, the idea of RegPack was only for onboarding, like gathering that information, doing that data crunching, basically creating an automatic database for each organization. Because think of it like this, like every organization has a different onboarding process.
Right. Yeah.
Every
Hmm.
organization. Think about the differences of an onboarding process for, let's make it as like extreme as possible, right? A camp versus a doctor's office. Both of them are onboarding you as a client and need information, but they need totally different things. One works in family structure, one works in an individual structure. One, the information is mainly medical, the other information is mainly about the children and maybe about limitations, etc. It's a very different onboarding process. Now, if you can create, now what happens most of the time is that people use software that limits them, that tells them, okay, this is the onboarding process that you can do. And then from a business perspective, they don't have the ability to shine because they
Right.
have to
Yeah.
do what the software is able to do.
Hmm.
And what RegPack does is tells you, okay, you can build any type of onboarding process that you want because it can do also can and doctor's office and lawyers, et cetera, et cetera. You can build any onboarding process. And that was the initial idea of RegPack. I looked at the market and I said, it doesn't make sense that everybody is forced to do a similar onboarding process based on the software that they're using. It makes
Right.
no sense,
Yeah. Hmm.
right? It's like telling all the painters that they can only paint in a certain way because this is your canvas. It's like nobody would accept that, right?
Right.
But people were accepting that because that's how the software worked.
That's how it
So
was. Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, so that's how Redpack started initially. We didn't think about the concept of, okay, so I onboarded my client, but now I want to take money from them as well.
Mhm.
And that's where it actually came from the ground up, where they told us like we have to have payments integrated into this and so forth. And here is something that really I think makes Regpack very unique because where we look at the payments. What we did is initially we integrated payments, we allowed people to pay, etc. Um, and as we were seeing the system working, we were seeing that the ticket items were pretty high, like $3,000, $5,000 people needed to pay upfront. Um, I I I originally am not from the US. So when I was in the US, the first question I asked is like, okay, so why don't people pay in installments? And I remember my CFO saying, what do you mean? I'm like, why did people just pay in installments? Like, if I'm sending my kid to a camp or I'm doing an after school program, I don't have $3,000 to pay now, but I
Right.
can
Yeah.
pay in
Mhm.
installments. And he looked at me like as if I, fell off from the moon or something. He's like, no, you can pay your credit card. You can pay whatever you want. every month to your credit card. I'm like, no, why don't the business offer installments?
Mhm.
And that was just like a totally new idea for him. And he was like, I don't understand what you're talking about. I was like, okay, look, in order to register for an after school or for a camp or for anything,
Mhm.
I need to pre-register, right? Normally I'm registering 6 months in advance. That's like usual. That's not unique. So if someone is registering 6 months in advance for a service that they're going to get in 6 months, the business doesn't care if they pay in 6 installments, and the
Right.
user
Yeah.
wants to pay in 6 installments. So
Mhm.
why don't we just offer that? And that was a huge change that happened once we allowed that, where we just integrated installment plans without any interest, without any additional cost, not for the user and not for the organization, because it was a win-win for both,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And it was actually using the disadvantage that that service-based businesses have, that you need to pre-register, you need to order in advance, to their financial advantage, because we were looking at them differently. And once we implemented this, every organization that uses RegPack that allows installment plans sees their revenue grow between 20 to 30% right off the bat.
That's amazing.
That's
Wow.
amazing. That's
Wow.
amazing. And it's just like, and this is the sometimes the what I feel is the beauty of software, where you can see things that are possible in specific areas and implement it and make a real impact on these businesses and on people's lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that was just a great pivot that you had to, you had that oversight, that foresight to pivot. And sometimes that's what we need to do. It's amazing. So how do you see Asaf, a RegPack really making a difference when it comes to saving time and revenue for organizations worldwide?
So as we were building RegPack, one of the things that we noticed that was happening again and again and again is a
Mhm.
lot of these administrators were doing a lot of what we call grunt work. Okay. Work that just repeats itself again and again to send out the email on specific dates, to remind people of this, to check that, all kinds of like just grunt work. There's no other way of calling it, right? So we build an automating feature into RegPack, which we call triggers, right? You can trigger actions to happen on other actions. Okay. And and the idea here is that we work with our clients a lot in order to educate them that automation is not something that is against you. It's actually to your advantage
Right.
if you use it correctly. And the
Hmm.
way to use it correctly is to think of what we call the common case. There's a process that once you set in place for your business, 85-90% of your users will go through a specific process. Okay, let's say it's a tree that has every various ability changes, but most people are in a certain lane. Okay,
Hmm.
if you're able to automate that 90%, you're doing an amazing service for your client and for yourself, because your client can just run through it and do whatever they want to do. And you suddenly don't have to do the grunt work. Like
Right.
everything is just automated.
Yeah.
And the best bonus is that 10% that is unique, that you need to transfer a payment to a different child, or you want to allow someone to attend a course that they're basically on, they shouldn't be eligible for, but I don't know, that's a very gifted child or whatnot, right? Suddenly you can give that 10% the real service that makes you a much better business, because you're not dealing with the 90% that's just running through automatically.
Right. Right. That's amazing. Makes sense. Makes
Mhm.
sense. And when we adapt automation, that's where everything's going. You got to automate a business so that for entrepreneurs, it leaves you more time to do the tasks that that's urgently needed. You're not doing the mundane. So if you automate, Absolutely. I agree with that. What advice, Asab, would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs, especially those who are aiming to build the technology and they have the drive of the motivation? What advice would you give?
Um, I'm not going to give popular advice now. I'm not going to be that popular right now. Okay. The first advice that I'm going to give you is that you need to know technology. The fact that you know to use a prompt of AI or that you, I don't know, you know to write HTML, that's not enough. You need to understand technology. You need to be able to write code. You need, if you're building a technological service,
Mhm,
you need to be a techie yourself, or you need a co-founder that is a techie. Okay,
mhm,
like cannot you the I advise a lot of entrepreneurs, and I really I won't say 100%, but let's say 90% of the time I'm pretty accurate if this is gonna succeed or not. And it's really connected to the founder if they understand their abilities and limitations.
right. Mhm,
So if they understand, okay, I'm very, very strong in the financial and business part, and I need a tech person to be with me,
mhm,
then they're going to succeed. If someone is very, very strong in the tech part, but they're not that good at marketing and business, and they bring on a co-founder that is, they're going to succeed. If someone's ego is the size of a building and they think that they know everything, and
mhm,
when they don't, they're not going to succeed,
right.
period.
Mhm,
Okay, so I know it's not popular to say that, but just understand what you're good at. That's the first thing. The second thing is build something that you're passionate about. Now, what are you passionate about? You're passionate about a problem that you've experienced yourself.
mhm,
If you understand the problem that you're solving, you're going to solve the problem.
right.
You know, I don't know, by the way, I don't know if this is true, but it was, there's the myth, right? That for 20 years, Siemens tried to create the dishwasher, right? And they couldn't. And then only when they put a woman engineer, then she managed to build the dishwasher because she
Really?
understood the real problem, right?
Uh-huh.
So, but that was like in 1980, right? I don't know if it's true, the myth, but that's a myth, right?
Right.
So it's the
Uh-huh.
same thing, right? Like
Mhm,
if you understand the problem, if you really understand the problem, and you have the abilities, or you and your founders together have the abilities to execute a good solution to the problem, you're going to succeed. If
mhm,
you don't have that, you don't have a problem that you're passionate about, you don't have, especially if you're building a tech company, you don't have tech ability, you don't have business ability, you don't have marketing ability, it's going to be very difficult.
right. When you hire employees, what's the first criteria that you look for? Do they have to have a tech background, or do you give training for
First of all,
people that work on the team?
we have a very long training program in
Right.
Ridgepack. The first 2 months, you're only training, you're not doing anything,
Mhm,
but it really depends on which department I'm hiring for. If I'm hire, if I'm hiring for a tech position, obviously I'm very interested in their tech abilities. If I'm hiring for a marketing position, it's different. If I'm hiring for account executive, it's different. One thing that is very important to me as a founder, and it might not be correct, I don't know, but it has worked for me until now. My After like the initial fluff questions of that, Mike, the first real question that I ask is tell me about something that you built and that you're proud of.
right. Okay. Mhm,
So, because the type of people that I want on in my company are not people that just do what they're told. There's like a really in Ridgepack, everybody knows this story where one of my co-founders, who is the head of operations, like and he's my right hand, right? Um, And one day I told him, okay, let's change the process. Let's do the process in this and this way, where the project manager does that. Like, it doesn't matter the actual change that I wanted to do. So I told
Mhm.
him, let's do this change. And 2 months in, we're doing our regular meeting, and I'm looking at all the numbers. All the numbers are going down. I'm like, okay, Calvin, what's going on? Like, why is everything going down? He's like, you wanted to do it this and this way, and it's not working. And I frankly, it was one of the only times I went ballistic. I was like, Calvin, I want to fire you right now. Like, why would you do something that I said? You're seeing that it's not working,
Right.
and you're
Yeah.
still doing it. And he was like, because you said you want to do it. It's like, so what? I make mistakes too. So that's the type of people that I look for in RegPack, that they have an open mind, that they see the numbers. And by the way, he's never done it again, ever, or
Right.
anybody else in RegPack.
Uh-huh.
That they see the numbers, uh, they're open-minded, they understand that data eventually is the one that decides, right? Another example is that we had a head of sales was really pushing to allow free trials, right? And it was a huge endeavor to allow it, and so forth. And eventually we launched it. And after 3 months, and I was very proud of that this happened. After 3 months, he came back and he's like, turn it off. I'm like, why? And he's like, the sales are actually smaller. The sales that are coming in are smaller, and it's hurting the close rate. And he saw the data, even though he was pushing for it. It was his baby, and he took care of all the tech part and all that. He
Mhm.
came after, and took about 4 months to implement and so forth. Turn it off. The data is showing that it's not worth it.
Right. Mhm. Essentially, you have to have um, individuals have to have the strengths and weaknesses because not everyone's going to be good at techie, not everyone's going to be good at marketing or branding, but you got to know where your strengths lie. And I think that's always the key, how you market your business and, where your strengths are pretty much. So when we talk about aspiring entrepreneurs, this is what, you go into organizations. You have an extensive background, Asaf. You've studied at UC Berkeley and your
Mhm.
academic background. How has your academic background shaped your entrepreneurial journey into starting Regpack?
It's basically everything. Like, I think RegPack exists because I did my PhD. My connections in the US exist because I had a Fulbright scholarship and I came to UC Berkeley. Um, Again, not that popular. Everybody likes to think in terms of like everybody can do this and you don't need any education. I don't believe in that. I just don't. I think education is very, very important. Being able to think in an analytical way, being able to understand problems at a much wider level is what academic studies give you.
Mm-hmm,
And I know it's a lot more popular that, yeah, you didn't finish high school and you built the biggest tech company in the world. Yes. And you know why you hear about all those people?
mm-hmm.
Because that's the outlier. That's not what normally happens.
Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, when we look at other successful people, Richard Branson didn't go to school. I mean, he didn't finish high school. He didn't finish. But
But that's the
look at
point.
Richard Branson. Just a classic example that you don't have to have a paper qualification, but you put your mind and you have the drive, you have the vision for a company, you have that forecast, you can make it. Anyone can do it.
I agree. I agree. Yes, it is possible. If you want to, um, if the only if the only thing that's important to you is to succeed in business and not necessarily be a round person that has
Mm-hmm.
a larger set of abilities, that has a fuller life, then go for it. I think life is not just about building a company and making money. So,
Right. Absolutely. I agree with that. I mean, it's much more. You can build a company and at the same time, and you hit up on that, that great point that when we look at life or we look at business, is are you a whole?
mhm.
Do you have the business life, you have your personal life, and how do you combine them both? Because that's where success truly lies. I mean, that's how I feel that if you can build a great company, that's your asset, but also on a holistic level, what on the
I totally
outside from
agree.
your work, how are you building? How do you approach life in general?
Actually, my younger son asked me that question, I think 3 days ago. Dad, what do you think success is for
Hmm.
you? And
Right,
I told him being able to have lunch with you, not getting into a car, and controlling my time.
right.
That's
Control
success.
your time. Exactly. Control your time. I mean, that's so cool. And just to have that, but oftentimes, we don't get that time. But when we cultivate the time and what's important, family time, and then, our priorities as well. As a speaker, writer, and you go into organizations, how do you see the role of RegPack playing a huge role when it comes to technology?
Mhm.
And how
So
do you, with your as a speaker or the writer, how do you aspire entrepreneurs when you go into organizations, and how do you cultivate that?
So I'll be a bit of cliche now. The first thing that you need to do when you come to an organization is listen and really understand the problem that they're dealing with. What I like to do when I'm talking to organizations is ask them, what are the three main pain points that you're dealing with right now as an organization? Now,
Mhm.
I ask for three on purpose because if you will let them just talk, they'll tell you like 100.
Right, exactly,
Right?
yes.
But I want to know the three that are hurting you the most, not necessarily the most pressing, that are hurting you the most. And then once you have those three, it's very easy to start controlling the conversation to solutions to those three problems.
Right.
And it's very easy for people to fall back into their day-to-day, okay, or the day-to-day problems. Like, oh, I'm using a software that now the report that goes out, I need to massage the report and then I need to upload it here and then I need to do this. It's like, okay, leave that problem alone. What's the main problem that you're dealing with as an organization? And they're like, okay, user satisfaction is going down. Okay, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about user satisfaction because the reports is something that is not that important because once you have good user satisfaction, the reports you can automate, right? Yes. So that way, that's how I come to organizations normally. I want to understand the three major pain points. Then we see if we can help.
Mhm.
And for me, it's really important that if I see that we're not a good fit, to walk away to tell the organization, I don't think that we can help you. Thank you for your time, et cetera, et cetera. Because trying to force a sale at the end just creates churn for your company and creates frustration on at the organization level, at the client level.
Right.
Um,
Hmm.
so it's about listening, but not taking their word for it, I would say. Okay. And again, this is what I talked about the analytical abilities. You need to listen and you need to basically understand between the lines what they're saying. Because a lot of times they're talking about, I'll give a great example, right? We had an organization come in and the administrator were talking about sales reports and income reports, and they were talking a lot about reports. And then I remember asking them, okay, I don't understand, like why is reporting so important in your organization? Like you don't sound like you're not like a 300 per person organization. Like reporting normally happens like becomes so important when there's a lot of hierarchy in the organization, and you're not like that. And then they explained that they keep monitoring their finances because they're having a cash flow issue
Oh,
constantly.
oh.
So, okay, so let's stop talking about the reporting. That's not the problem. The problem is your cash flow.
Cash flow.
Like
Mhm,
once we fix the cash flow, you won't need to have reports every single day because you want to know exactly where you're standing, right? And they're
mhm.
like, yes. Okay, so, and then we offered various solutions to improve their cash flow. And they're like, oh, wow, that's great. Today, a year in, they don't care about the financial reports. The financial reports are great in RegPack and they do it, they use them and all that, but we solved their cash flow issue.
Yes,
So the whole problem of everybody talking about the reports every single week went away.
right, exactly. Get to the root of the problem. And not
Exactly.
like a band-aid, yeah, just get to the root. Steph, I just
Because
want to go back to
people are so used to doing what they're doing that
yes.
they sometimes forget that they're doing it for a reason.
Hmm.
They focus, like in this case, they focus about how can I make the reporting better, whereas the real reason you're doing the reporting is your cash flow issue.
Cash,
But they're so into that endless grunt process that they
hmm.
don't notice that that's the problem. And that's
Absolutely. Yeah,
where someone coming outside of the organization can really help because you can listen and understand, okay, that's not the actual problem.
exactly. Exactly. Get to the root of the problem so that, the organization can run more productively and more efficient. I want to talk, just want to go back to what you mentioned, when I mentioned about, as a speaker, as a mentor, a writer, what are the key takeaways when you go into organizations? What are key takeaways that you want them to take away when you're speaking to them?
Um,
What would you say? What are the key takeaways?
I would say that the key takeaway that I try to bring as a value into the organization is the ability to allow people to become creative again.
Mm. Hmm.
A lot of people look at computers and software as something
Yeah.
that hurts your creativity, that limits you. But I see it the exact opposite because it frees you to be more human. Right
Right.
now, a lot of people, what they're doing is they're
Mhm.
mimicking what software can do for them. They're doing actions that you can automate. They're doing actions that software can do for them. And then once they stop doing that, they have a lot of free time. And once they have a lot of free time, they can be creative and do things that only humans can do. Only humans can connect like you and I are connecting now and really talk and try to exchange ideas, right? Only humans can think of new educational programs that will help their clientele. Only you, like that's a human ability. And from my perspective, the way that I see computers is the ability to allow human creativity to shine. So that's
Right.
what I try to bring into organizations.
Beautiful. And as you go into organizations, can you share your success stories that how RegPack transformed the organization and what are some of the results that they have gotten as RegPack, goes into the organizations?
Sure.
So what are some of the success stories?
First of all, there's like a ton of case studies and success stories on our website. You can always go in and they're great. I also remember I remember one little success story that I was really happy about personally. It was like talking to one of the clients
Uh-huh.
and I was asking him like how is RegPack now? Like do you like what it did to your organization? And it was so funny. It was like, you know what I like the most? I can have lunch now. And
Oh,
I
so
was like, oh,
before he could.
wow. I'm like, that was that bad, huh? I was like, okay, but yeah, like a lot of organizations that come to RegPack, it really depends on the problem that they're dealing with. We have,
Mhm.
there are two main groups. There are organizations that come in that they have their messaging down, they have the clientele, and their main problem basically is that they have quota issues and wait lists, and they need to manage that they basically need to manage that they have too many clients, right? And they need to manage that ability, and it creates a lot of work for the organization to do it in a fair way, whatever they decide is fair, right? That's one type of organization. The other type of organization is something that probably most people are more familiar with is I want to grow my revenue. I want to grow my client base. I want to help with my marketing. So those are like the two different. The first one is actually technology can help a lot because technology is very helpful when you need to automate more things, when you need to control quotas, where you need to create a system that allows people to join in, and then there's like staggered entrance, all kinds of things that exist in Regpack. So organizations that have situations like that, where they have quota issues, when they have a lot of people, a lot of organizations have they open up a registration, and in 1 hour they have 5,000 people trying to register at the same time and trying to get a spot. So
Wow.
we have a lot of technology that helps that and makes it fair, makes it that first come, first serve, all kinds of like mechanisms that exist. So that's one. And we have
Mhm.
organizations that from a situation where they would have even legal action done against them because of like that I couldn't register my child in time, etc. To a situation where everything just runs smoothly, everything just happens, the revenue comes in at the right time, installment plans are possible, etc. So that's like the first type. The second type is a little more tricky, where you want to grow your revenue, and we have multiple organizations from dance schools to after school programs to camps that have grown their revenue by 30% by implementing RegPack. And that is through the auto bill and installment plans. That is through what we call the dunning system that exists in RegPack, where it makes sure that your account receivables in this industry, the account receivables are normally between 20 to 30%. And when
Mhm.
you're using RegPack, it goes down to 3%
Oh,
because of
wow.
technology that we have.
Mhm.
If you want, I can elaborate. So the success stories normally that we hear about is revenue growth and a lot of time freed by the organization. And the result of the time freed is that client satisfaction goes through the roof.
Beautiful. That's exactly, and that's what entrepreneurs want. And
Yeah.
so, when it comes from the leadership perspective, how do you see Regpack, and from the standpoint of your academic background, and how does it intertwine with your academic background with the innovation and technology? How do you see it all interrelating together? The
So like I said,
innovation part and technology.
first of all, I am I still code until today. Like I at least 2 or 3 days a week, I sit down and I code and I build something. So I normally do the more high level things, but those are my best days. Like I just love building stuff, right? So I think the academic background allowed RegPack to exist, but it also is sort of the main theme that exists in the company, that data is the king. We always look at the data in order to understand what to do and how to do it. We in RegPack, um, no ideas are not selected by your position in the company or seniority. It's based
Mhm.
on who has the best idea. And a lot
Yeah,
of times I don't have the best idea, right? Like tell someone, oh yeah, you have the best idea, so we're going to implement your idea.
right.
Um, and in terms of the innovation, we constantly innovate
Mhm.
because we really believe that like the way that we think about innovation in RegPack is if I would be building a company today, how would I cause RegPack to go out of business? what technology would I build to win RegPack, like extremely win in a competition with RegPack. And that's the technology that we built.
Right. As you studied at UC Berkeley, how and you also studied PhD. So how does PhD, your academia background, how does the role of innovation and technology play into that?
Oh, well, when you're doing a PhD, you have to be innovative. Like
Yeah.
that's the base. You have to ask a question that has never been asked, and you have to prove something that has never been proved. So I would say that it's just, first of all, it's part of who you are, and then a lot of times, whoever the founder is, it's what the company becomes. So innovation and looking for questions that will give us insights to the underlying problem is something that we do all the time. I'll give an example of something that most companies would see as a problem. We have seasonality. Like, not all year is the same level of work in RegPack. In the summer months, like July, August, September, it really goes down. Now, what we do in those months is that each department and each
Mhm.
employee takes on themselves a innovative project, anything they want. Okay, and they have to ask, and it's really built like an academic project. Like, ask the question, like, what is the question that you think you want to ask? What are the tools that you need in order to answer that question? And then go out and find the answers and come back and present it to your team, whatever answers you found, and then bring also things that can be implemented. And normally, out of everybody that does these projects, between 2 to 5 projects are selected and implemented in the year after. So it's just part of our DNA, I would say.
Right. What drives you, Asaf? What is your motivation every day when you wake up? What's your driving force? What's the motivator to get you going throughout your day? Running RegPack, highly successful. What is that motivation that you can share with us so our viewers listening can be inspired by you?
Again, my son asked me this, like we had a nice conversation 3 days ago, and he asked me, like, Dad, how can you work so many hours? How
Mhm.
can you work? And my answer was, I have never worked a day in my life. I have never worked a day in my life. Every day I wake up and I do what I like. I do
Mm,
what I want to do. So I haven't worked a day in my life.
right. Yeah.
So the motivator is basically the mindset that it's not, oh my God, the problem again. I don't want to do these problems. No, it's like, how do I
Right.
solve these problems? Like how, okay, this is a challenge. This is interesting. How do I
Mm,
take this problem and how
mhm.
do I find a solution for it? Or if there's a problem that repeats itself again and again and again, accept it. Accept that this is the problem. You can't fix it. How can we build around that problem? Because that's a constant. I'll give an example for that. We had on the website leads come in, right? And we had what we called a no contact. It was like people that left their information, explained everything about their organization, but then disappeared. And it was about 20% of the leads that we were getting were no contacts. At some point, it became a personal obsession to solve this problem, right?
Right.
And we tried, I'm not kidding, I tried like 10 different ways to solve the problem
Mhm.
until at some point I just understood this is what it is. This problem is not going to be solved. 20% of the people that tell you that they're interested in you are not going to contact, like you can't contact them. You can't
Right. Yeah.
communicate with them.
Mm,
Now, the solution is to get more leads or to make sure that the type of people that are coming to the website are the correct type of people.
mhm.
So it's like the problem exists, but let's work around it. So
Right.
that's one thing that we do. And another thing that I do is that
Mhm.
I really am interested in the day-to-day problems and see it always as a challenge. of how can I solve this problem. It's interesting. It's not like daunting.
Exactly. So, challenges are always going to be there in business, but it's how do we, go about and how do we pivot and really take a step back and reflect. Oftentimes, that's what we need, just to reflect, and then the problems, it easily just, goes away, and the solutions we find very easily. Asaf, I want to thank you for joining us today. It's been a powerful conversation and really appreciate your time today. Where can people find you and connect with you?
First of all, the website, the best place to go is regpacks.com. We have a really nice LinkedIn, just LinkedIn/regpack. A lot of updates and industry news and research that we publish there. We have an Instagram. You can find us on Instagram. Actually, there it's more like humoristic and funny. It's actually really funny. Um, and and that's about it. We also we participate in a lot of conferences in the US. So you can actually have probably if you go to one of the conferences that connected to service-based businesses, you will meet one of the people from RegPack. I guess that's the best way.
Okay, amazing. And we'll put it in the show notes. So thank you so much, Asaf. And thank you so much to the listeners for tuning in today. We've heard from Asaf Darash. He shared valuable insights into the organization, into payments and registrations, and innovation and technology. And we want you to always be successful in life, in business. And today was such a powerful, insightful conversation. So we want to thank Asaf, and we want to thank you, the listeners. And we want you to don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave us a review. In this way, we can bring you more insightful conversations and amazing guests. So until next time, stay tuned for more to come. Bye for now. Asaf, thank you so much.
Thank you. That was nice.
Thank you.